You see Matthew Foulkes. On the left, it is Juha Saarnilampi. I feel like I'm already getting better at pronouncing that beautiful last name.
Yeah, so some key card matchups we talked about, things like Endless Arrow, Three of a Kind. I mean, Matt really, that is the truth of the deck with Lexi. Lexi can kill anybody from anywhere if you draw those Three of the Kinds and you're able to go off, especially with those Codex of Frailties. Yuha looking for some of those more important dragons to start off. Early Rake the Embers would be great, followed by a Tomotai. Matt mentioned it as the most feared dragon here. Chroma is coming down as well. And then, the Ranger typically doesn't have a great way to block, so things like Kyloria can be a bit more impactful in this matchup than they are in others.
Yeah, I want to take a quick survey of the equipment over on Yuha's side. You do see Crown of Providence up there in the head slot, Flamescale Furnace, as always. And then things get a little interesting as we get to the arm slot. We're seeing Seeker's Mitts more and more. This seems to be the play from these Dromais, and you see that Seeker's Mitt immediately activated, creating that Ash on their turn 0. That's what it's there for. That's what it wants to do. Mission accomplished. Good job, Seeker's Mitts. Mage Master boots the legs for Yuha. That points to me, probably Tome of Fyendel being included, Brendan. Are there reasons you would play Mage Master boots if you weren't playing Tome?
Not in this matchup, at least. I think the Tome of Fyendal, is going to be the main reason. Interesting to see the Rake the Embers pitch, though, in for the sake of that Seeker's equipment. I'm interested to see what Yuha has as sort of his turn 1 play after pitching that Rake the Embers. Yuha mentioned that this deck is very Ash hungry, so it needs to be generating a lot of Ash to sort of facilitate those turns, especially in the early game.
Yeah, and we saw yesterday a Dromai absolutely dismantle, in this case an Oldhim, off the back off of early Rake the Embers. It just dramatically increases your damage output across turns. And you see for Matthew Foulkes, it is just going to be a setup turn on turn 0, sets up that 6-card hand, the double arsenal that Lexi has become so famous for. A nice way to do so with Falcon Wing at the ready in Arsenal.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're going to start off with that Chroma that Yuha was talking about.
Yeah, not bad. Find that critical dragon right off the bat. Take away some of the stress of those poppers. As you mentioned, I believe 4 poppers available for Foulkes.
Yeah, Yuha did mention that the power of this card comes in with allowing for the rest of your team to sort of swing through. So right now, Chromite impactful in terms of being a high-value target, but outside of that, just really 3 damage coming out. I think in sort of larger board states for the Dromai player can be a lot scarier.
And we're just going to get this Chromite cleaned up a little bit, make sure that Ash is represented underneath. Got to cross your T's, dot your I's down there in the feature match area. Dust Up is the follow-up here for Yuha. Very important to note when Dromais are sculpting turns that are not vulnerable to poppers. You always prefer to play in that fashion if you're able to.
Yep, Dust Up a tough break point for Matt to deal with in terms of blocking. Yuha looks like he will likely be left with 2 cards in hand.
And for Foulkes, first test of the matchup comes in the form of this Dust Up attack.
Does look like it might be a no block from Matt here, going down to 36, I believe. Or maybe even more. I think the live totals might not be updated quite yet.
Yeah, and you understand on Matt's side why you're incentivized to just go ahead and eat a little bit of damage here. That famous 6-card hand, particularly with a Falcon Wing at the ready, capable of producing some absurd amounts of damage. There are those updated life totals, and we see that Foulkes did indeed take that first swing from Chromai as well.
There we go. There's the Sigil of Solace. Makes sense. Makes a little bit more sense this turn sequencing now. Able to go up to 43 and keep a card for Arsenal.
I believe that's a pitch sigil in this case that's going to go through the Flamescale Furnace and play into that idea of Ash hungriness, just going ahead and producing that over and over.
Yeah, I apologize that. I thought I saw the life total go up there for a sec. But yeah, Matt coming back with a 6-card hand. Very scary for Yuha for Matt's first turn here. If we see something big, potentially like a Rain Razors on this turn, or even see that namesake 3 of the kind come out, it's going to be a great start for Lexi.
Yeah, start playing those 8-card hands that only Lexi can play. Really unique to the game of Flesh and Blood. And it's interesting, not to harp on the bit of a misstep there, but like understanding that Sigil is going to be pitched there is weird. It's just a free play. You go up to 43. That sounds excellent to smooth brains like myself. But in this case, the Ash is so important for Yuha's deck, just willing to filter that through the Flamescale Furnace, making sure that next turn is set up appropriately. and that they can produce more and more dragons as the game goes on.
Yeah, very congruent with what Juha told us in terms of strategy, just making sure that they can generate as much ash as possible to facilitate the actual cards they'll be drawing in hand and get that board state start to build up.
And for Foulkes, very deliberate thus far, taking his time, thinking through things. Foulkes can get a little excitable in the future match area, I'd say. Prone to nerves, prone to a little handshaking. But this will certainly ease those nerves a little bit. How about time for a 3 of a kind? Going to pick up 3 new cards from the top of the deck is Foulkes.
Yeah, absolutely best case scenario for a start for Foulkes here. We did see that Falcon Wing go face as well.
Everything will have to be played out of Arsenal at this point for a deck with access to Voltaire, with access to Bullseye Bracers. Not going to be a problem. What do you think of Matt's pace right now? He really seems to have slowed down from how he played Swiss rounds and just like very deliberate, very thoughtful, really getting his feet under him on this first turn, which is, by the way, a very important turn. If Foulkes is able to put out a flurry of damage on this turn, something absurd, a 25, 30-point turn, which Lexi is 100% capable of, it could really set the tone for how the rest of the turns in this game are going to be played.
Yeah, it's interesting because you did mention, Matt getting a little bit excited talking about some of the nerves going into this match. But I think I've found through my history of watching Matt that he has always been a consistently deliberate player and even, kind of errs on the slower side when it comes to actually playing out his turns.
It does find a blue card to pitch here. It's going to be Heatseeker. Or excuse me, that is a Heatseeker. Yes, played from Arsenal here. 2 resources floating. No go again on this one, so it looks like we're going to see an early use of those Snapdragon Scalers in this case. I promise Foulkes is not done in this spot. Wants to do a lot more with that Heatseeker rolled up from the last turn. Oh, could be a bit demanding. Voltaire activation. Maybe this was placed.
So maybe it was a verbally indicated Voltaire activation there.
Yep. Yep, that would make sense.
I do think that Matt Foulkes will snap off those Snapdragon Scalers as soon as he is presented with a high enough value play.
Sure, and it looks like you are already willing to make some blocks here. Is going to go ahead and commit that Flamescale Furnace alongside the Centipie. Clean block, preventing. Okay, so it does have to be give and go again by the Snapdragon Scalers. Not quite sure what the Voltaire is indicating in that case. We haven't loaded yet, correct? Maybe some other mode of visual tracking that Foulkes likes to use to plan out his turn.
It looks like we have a...
There we go. There we go. He says, I have not used this yet. You are correct, Matt. You have not. There's maybe a little bit of those nerves starting to manifest.
Yeah, doing a little backtracking there, looking for the Snapdragon Scalers, trying to kind of retrace the turn through the graveyard, it seems. Players do tend to indicate their Voltaire usages through rotating it, 90 degrees.
Yeah, and this will all get sorted out. Players will figure out the board state. I agree with Foulkes' interpretation of things. I think that Heatseeker was present in Arsenal, and I was thrown off by the indication of it, the Voltaire being used. And now we have our first Voltaire activation.
Looks like potentially a Bolton shot coming in here.
Yeah, blue in this case.
Yeah, I wonder if it's going face or maybe clearing a dragon.
Well, that's a good question. Can, of course, guarantee that reload by going after a dragon. One of the things you love as Alexi is getting those free activations, something like an Endless Arrow that can just clean up multiple dragons. Really, really nice. It looks like in this case, Foulkes is apparently going face, as I believe we see Juha considering some blocks here.
Yeah, Endless Arrow, one of the key tools that Matt will need in sort of the mid to even close to late game here when the board state starts to get out of control. I'd say Chromai with one Aether Ashwing, very manageable at this point. That's why you've seen Matt sort of start to go face here. I don't think that the actual gameplay of the Lexi deck is just only go face, right? There are going to be certain dragons that Matt will need to clear, especially when presented with a efficient card like Endless Arrow.
Yep.
Will likely clear many dragons on turns like that, but we see the Chromai come out with another Bolton shot
Yeah,
here.
and this makes a lot of sense why Foulkes chose to play that last Bolton shot in the fashion he did. Going to have a guaranteed reload from this Bolton shot going after that Chromai. Has put that card in Arsenal. It's going to be a drill shot fired for free for headed Juha's way. I think given what was played on this turn, the fact that Foulkes went into this turn with a 6-card setup, with 3 of a kind at the ready, Juha got away with this turn pretty scot-free.
Yeah, I mean, Matt did play 5 arrows this turn, has cleared the board, is presenting a little bit of damage, but it's not really that sort of infamous 3 of a kind turn that we're used to out of Lexi, especially off the 6-card hand, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I think Juha was sweating a lot more when that 3 of a kind was played.
Yep, so drill shot does go at the Aether Ashwing. I thought I saw a finger to denote. That is the target. So Matt fully clearing the board, back to parity. We're going to go back to Juha's turn. 1 Ash available.
Yeah, so let's note, power card down there, very little headway made. As you said, cleaned up the board very well, but no real damage threat thus far. Only a 1-card arsenal heading into the next turn, and Juha with some cards in hand still. So I'm calling that the first win of the match for Juha. I kind of like to track these micro wins as we move through matches, and that really feels like a win to me.
Yeah, we talk about 3 of a kind being used and not having a huge amount of impact, but I think more importantly, Snapdragon Scalers was used there. Now in the graveyard.
Yeah.
Really going to stop Matt from having, I guess some of those somewhat unpredictable, just huge combat chains that can be facilitated from that card.
No, I think you're exactly right, Brendan. Sort of the draws a bit mediocre for Foulkes. Had to go ahead and use 2 blue Bolton shots to go ahead and get that combat chain wide. Not exactly what he wanted to find there, I think. This here is a sweeping blow being played by Juha, setting up that Ash very nicely. 3 Ash at the ready.
Mm-hmm. A dust up pitched as well.
Yeah, and that's going to be it for the turn for Juha. Just a bit of setup. But more damage to Foulkes, and already a substantial life lead starting to develop on Juha's side.
Yeah, I think we're going to see Foulkes consistently sort of play around these power turns. Here's another 3 of a kind for Foulkes. I mean, seriously, it doesn't get much better than this. I know the last turn was a bit underwhelming in terms of the actual arrows drawn, but 3 of a kind into 3 of a kind. You heard it from the man himself. Matt said that Lexi can kill anybody from anywhere if it draws those cards.
Yeah, and I'm quite interested whether it's actually going to be deployed on this turn. There is some possibility that you just want to go ahead and save that for a more powerful spot, set up that 6-card hand, and instead it has to be flipped up solely to get access to that second arsenal slot via New Horizons.
Yeah, I think you're potentially right, Brian.
It is going to be another Heatseeker coming through, offering to expand that arsenal a bit further at end of turn, should it hit. There is some upside there. You get a wider turn next go around, guaranteed 6 cards while still playing out all of your hand this turn. Could be quite a nice way to start off the turn as far as clarity as to how the next turn will be played.
Yeah, I wonder if Juha is going to prioritize trying to keep some sort of disruption. I know the Dramai deck doesn't have a lot of it, but maybe something, like a Vincerakai or like some must-answer dragon to try to crack back with to disrupt that on, upcoming 3 of a kind turn, like you said, that might be facilitated by a 6-card hand.
Yeah, interesting decision here about that Crown of Providence, I think. You're offered a 2-card block potentially, resetting that arsenal, but it is just going to be a block from hand. Looks like passing Mirage Kyloria comes down, stops those Heatseekers from connecting. Follow up from Foulkes here. It is going to be a Pathing Helix. Loaded up into arsenal. I'm assuming we'll see a plus on this one.
Yeah, Matt Foulkes critically 3 counters on the Tunic, resource available to go.
Okay, it is go again here. So Foulkes saying wants to preserve that threat should this hit, able to load up maybe. Maybe even thinks about 3 of a kind at that point. There's a lot of options available. I can understand wanting to preserve them on this turn.
Yeah, it can sort of dynamically play out that card as Juha presents Matthew with more information as we progress through the turn here.
Yep. Stay flexible. Good rule in Flesh and Blood. To keep all of your lines open to you. Adapt on the fly. That's what the best players do. That's what Pro Tour champions like Matt Foulkes are capable of doing. And Juha's seat, this pathing helix, giving a bit of pause. Causing him to think. Some blocks available here. Could combine that Flamescale Furnace with a card from hand. If you think that on hit is particularly threatening.
I do wonder what on hits, potentially we are saving the equipment for outside of that.
Yeah, it looks like Pathing Helix is going to come through. Foulkes
Okay.
does have the option to go ahead, set up Arsenal. Looks like going to close the combat chain.
Okay, so it looks to be setting up for the 3 of a kind turn off the Tunic on the following turn here.
And I really like Foulkes' decision to actually give that Pathing Helix go again. It added a lot of uncertainty to Juha's decision making. I think what we saw there was an expert player trolling for maybe a little bit more information, maybe a potentially presented piece of equipment. Trying to offer an opportunity for a misplay from your opponent is a very, very solid line. But this also makes a lot of sense. How about just a Codex of Frailty, one of the first power cards we've seen played by Foulkes outside that first 3 of a kind. This just does everything for you. It sets you up with that Ponder token, going to allow you to pop off with that Pathing Helix and still maintain that 6-card hand plus 3 of a kind going into the next turn. So this basically is vanilla damage headed the way of Juha right now. I could see if you chose to take the last one, you probably just choose to take 4 here. But if you're Foulkes, you're entirely okay with that. Really looking set up for the next turn. I guess there is some merit to saying, well, I just want to preserve life total on this turn, so maybe I have the option of taking damage on the next turn. But I think for the most part, Juha's decision on this arrow was made on the previous arrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Matt drawing some incredible cards here in the first 2 turns. I mean, exactly what he told us about, for the 3 of the kinds. Now finding the Codex of Frailty to pair with it. And we're going to transition right into that 3-0 turn after. I mean, looking tough for Juha at the moment. We did speak to maybe the lopsidedness of this matchup, but right now looks to be quite a bit of parity with Matt maybe drawing the better half of his deck.
I agree. I think Matt has found power cards on basically all the turns he's played thus far. Found very good ways to produce threat on Juha. And Juha not quite getting wide yet. Doesn't have that dumpster of dragons at the ready. Those of you just tuning in today, that is actually the official term for a group of dragons, a dumpster. Official from me. Maybe no one else.
There's a sink below. Makes sense for sitting in the arsenal for, I think this is the 2nd turn it's been there now. Ponder token trigger for Matt.
Yeah, Matt happy to put that card into arsenal, as we said, representing on the next turn the second 6-card hand plus 3 of a kind of the game. And also very noteworthy, has that Tunic available. Did not spend it on that turn. So that's max resources if you're Lexi. That's really where you want to be going into your next turn.
No, absolutely. Best case scenario. I'm interested to see what Juha has here in the 2-card hand to maybe try to disrupt or at least deviate Matt from this explosive turn that he's about to take.
Yeah, has the Ash at the ready to make a dragon. But it is just command and conquer. Excellent play from Juha. Maybe the best possible card to have in that scenario. Going to demand a block from Foulkes here. Does not want to give up those 2 cards in arsenal. Command and conquer, of course, clears out the entire arsenal.
Yeah, I would assume simply no decision here for Matt in terms of blocking. Just has to decide which cards from hand will be put in front of this. But, 3 oak in arsenal, no way this card is hitting.
Absolutely not. And then you wonder what the next turn looks like for Foulkes. Is there an alternate line that still gets some value from that card in arsenal, from the 2 cards that should be left in hand?
I think that Matt might forego playing 3 oak again and just opt to, play a little bit of a mid-range game, poke in, and just hope to not face down another command and conquer as we pass over to Juha's turn on that next cycle.
Beautiful dance playing out thus far. Jabs thrown from both sides. Question, answer has been the pace of this match thus far. And as we predicted, 2 cards going to be committed here. It looks like a pair of drill shots potentially on defense.
Yeah, I assume from Matt's perspective, this game is going very, very well. Talking about, maybe 0-7ing into this matchup, I think that if the board state is anywhere close to parity and so are the life totals, Matt is most likely in as close to a winning position as possible.
It's a good way of looking at it.
All right, over to Matt's turn here. 2 cards in hand, the 3 oak in arsenal, of course. Tunic available.
Yeah, a bit of revised planning here for Foulkes, and Three of a Kind has sort of two interesting applications. It can make those massive hands out of nowhere, 8 card hands potentially for Lexi. It can also save kind of a scuffed hand, and in the case where you've been forced to commit 2 cards to defense, is there some merit to using this Three of a Kind to sort of rebuild your stockpile and try and pull a nice big turn out of nowhere?
Absolutely. I think that this, it's totally an option to Matt to sort of maintain tempo as the beatdown deck right now.
The second card in Arsenal, unknown, put there by that ponder. It looks like it's going to be a Falcon Wing, so it was a nice one found off the ponder as far as wide turns go. Of course, some extra implied threat here. Always the possibility of something like a Rain Razors as this Falcon Wing comes through. And free to go face. No dragons to clean up for this Falcon Wing. You love to see it if you're on the Ranger side.
Yeah, not a situation I would think you often find yourself in as the Lexi player here a couple turns into the game. Matt only having to clear 2 dragons so far.
They're pretty scot-free, I'd say. He's gotten off.
And there's a 3 oak off the Tunic like we talked about, turning what would have been maybe a mediocre turn into potentially a powerful turn here for Fox. Winner's Bite off the top.
Yeah, working towards what will now be a 5-card hand, 1 card at a time, very slowly, considering options. I believe Endless Arrow was the draw there, and closes out with potentially
Premeditate, I believe.
Yeah, so it is critical, though. Did draw a blue card there, did Falk, so is going to have access to that blue Winner's Bite to be the resource card on this turn.
Yes, can only play cards from Arsenal. That is the sort of downside of 3 oak here.
Premeditate a bit of a brick, but that's okay. You'll go into the next turn with that as your arsenal, and as long as you have arrows to fire off here, you're pretty happy with the output. And of course, Infecting Shot going to be the first play with Go Again on the back of Voltaire. 1 resource floating for Foulkes.
Yep, 5 with Go Again, throwing an on hit of a Bloodrot Pox token that will likely deal Juha 2 more damage.
Yeah, especially against Dromais. Already a strong card, maybe made even stronger by sort of a shortage of resources for these Dromai players. And the other arrows in this trio of arrows, Sedation Shot going alongside Infecting Shot, the Frailty Shot as well. They've sort of stolen back some of the headlines in this tournament. I think they've proven to be very, very powerful options. But let's not forget, the Infecting Shot was the one that got all the hype out the gate. This looks like a 1 for 7 on its face. And when it plays out that way, you're talking about the best attack in the game, quite frankly.
Yep, definitely. I mean, it's a very powerful arrow. It does, in the context of maybe some of the earlier arrows printed in Flesh and Blood, this stands above the rest, I would say.
Absolutely.
We do see Crown of Providence used. So equipment economy for Juha dwindling at the moment.
Yeah. One of the big edges the Dromais have over Lexi is something like that crown, like that flame scale furnace. Of course, Lexi famously limited on equipment options.
And as a result, very, very subject to on-hit triggers offered via breakpoints. There's a down and dirty pitch. Important to keep track of that, as Matt does have 4 poppers in the deck, 2 down and dirty and 2 battering bolt, if the battering bolts have been sided in, which I assume they are.
Yeah, you assume so. I can't think of anything else they were for, although we saw them do a little bit of work for Azalea against Oldhim, but it does seem like those are exclusively anti-Dromai cards.
Infecting Shot here with a nice breakpoint of 4. Wonder if we will see the Flamescale Furnace thrown in front of this.
Yeah, so blue Infecting Shot, but is getting the buff from that Voltaire, and as we mentioned, it is just going to be premeditate heading to the arsenal as we move to the next turn. But first, we decide Juha's blocks on this arrow.
Potentially another 0 for 4 defense reaction out of Juha, I think would be a good card to have in hand. But I do believe we would likely have seen that run out quite quickly if that was the case.
Yeah, it's worth noting, Juha does have a bit more defensive options than the typical Dromai decks, I would say. It's things like Faith Foreseen, Oasis Respite at the ready, does have the Sand Covers, Sigil of Solace, Sink Below, so sort of a mid-range-ish Dromai build, if you will. But I think every Dromai build is sort of mid-rangers. They just have options. They have so many plans they have available to them, and it's one of the reasons why this deck has proven to be so fearsome in the hands of skilled competitors.
Absolutely.
So Juha debates this attack for 4.
potentially finds himself in a scenario where if he does block with another card, even with the Flameskull Furnace, has a hand that basically will just Arsenal pass, so might opt to try to put some aggression or build some board state against Matt Foulkes here once we pass over to Juha's turn.
I think he's gotta, right? You can't just sit back forever and
It's
play
not a
defense.
winning play, right?
Yeah, you have to go ahead and start putting those dragons out there in the arena. And Juha is happy to take that damage. Probably going to take 2 more as the turn progresses from this Blood Rot Hawks.
Matthew Foulkes likely need to put that in the bottom of the deck. There you go. Important for, Juha obviously in the top 8 of the Pro Tour, but always important to keep in mind the game plan of how do you actually win the game versus, opposed to how do you survive turn by turn.
I agree 100%. Always be playing towards that W. It's one of the things that distinguishes great Flesh and Blood players
Break
from
the
world
Embers.
champions.
This card was mentioned as an important card to pick up, especially in the early game. Gonna be hard for Matt to clear. Not hard for him to kill, but we'll have to likely commit resources into these Aether Ashwings that are a bit more valuable
Yeah,
than the Aether Ashwings.
You really want to deal with these on the Lexi side by Pauper, right? That's the most efficient way of doing so. You want to steal turns from your opponent. And I think that's a good strategy if you're Pauper rich. If you have some of these new style Lexi decks looking at multiple down and dirties, maybe looking at Command and Conquer, something like Brody Spurlock is playing. But I wouldn't say Foulkes falls under that category. I think Ashwing is going to be a bit of a problem card for him, and finding this rake was a big deal for Juha. It looks like that Blood Rot Pox is going to go ahead, do a bit of damage. Am I correct in assuming we only got in with 1 Aether Ashwing there, Brennan?
Yes, I have slightly not remembered the pitch, but I'm assuming maybe no go again, or what was the pitch there for the Rake the Embers?
I'm not sure what the pitch was.
It was a mirror guy, actually.
But the play was Red Rake the Embers,
yeah, you're
right?
The Red Rake the Embers. So maybe trying to avoid a popper on the second?
Maybe. Interesting.
I always try to err on the side of caution when trying to break down some of these Dromai plays because they do get, they get a bit technical.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to consider the worst case scenario. That's the way to play Dromai. What can go wrong? Play around it, set up your turns carefully. In this case, just a single Ashwing going to do damage. And there we see that premeditate arsenaled on the last turn by Foulkes. Blue card pitched. Drill shot loaded into arsenal. Assuming this will pick up some go again, plus the buff from premeditate, again offering a breakpoint. This represents 7. Oh, excuse me, it looks like we were dealing with a different color of drill shot here, dealing with the blue, perhaps, from Foulkes.
Yeah.
It is noteworthy that Foulkes picked up 6 drill shot. We've seen that number kind of fluctuate throughout the course of the tournament.
We saw how powerful that card can be, specifically against Oldhim in our initial matchup with Azalea versus Oldhim, utilizing drill shot to turn off Michael Fang's Rampart of the Ram's Head.
I almost like this more than an attack for 7, actually. It's kind of weird, but this is representing a very awkward break point for Juha. Would really need something like Fate Foreseen Sink Below to combine well with that Flamescale Furnace to get a clean block. And you are incentivized to use Flamescale Furnace here. Otherwise, you just take the -1 counter from the drill shot. So,
yep, absolutely. Matt having one of the more tame turns I think we've seen this game.
yeah, I think so. Foulkes has pretty much been power card after power card until this point.
Juha potentially getting a bit of space as a result on the back of that, but presented with a pretty nasty on-hit trigger here due to the Flamescale Furnace being at -1. Matt choosing to add an additional -1 counter to the Flamescale Furnace. Like we expected, though. Juha not able to get an additional point of value out of the Flamescale Furnace. Unfortunately, takes the 5 damage, but like we talked about in terms of macro strategy, is probably determining at this point, because it's not one of those ridiculous turns out of Matt, needs to keep a larger hand to create an actual board state to start threatening threatening Matt during this game, give him something to put those arrows into, start putting impactful dragons onto the board.
Bolton Shot, such a flexible card from these Rangers. It's really been the thing that's kind of unlocked so many game plans for them. The ability to leverage that plus into just go again on demand. So useful.
Interesting, Juha, thinking about committing a card to this Bolton Shot, it looks like. The 2-card block, Command and Conquer, and what looks to be Invoke Dominia or Invoke Vincerakai. I think it might be Dominia. Following up with an Infecting Shot. Juha avoiding that reload trigger, potentially from the Bolton Shot, committing 2 cards to that. Instead of the original Drill Shot now, presented with a Infecting Shot on hit trigger, create a Blood Art Pox token.
A pretty nice turn here from Foulkes, and Juha's life total is starting to get into that pressured range. Very much, down to 19. We talked about the ability for Lexi to pop you for 30 out of nowhere. Well, in general, this Drill My deck is kind of capped out at blocking for around 16. You could have something like one of the 0 cost for defense reactions in Arsenal. So you're sitting around something like 19 life. You do have to start thinking, am I just going to be presented with uncounterable lethal at some point?
Yeah, I do believe Matthew Foulkes is in a great position, is very much winning this game at this point. I think so far this game has not played out how either player expected, going off of the sort of pre-match interviews. And already being down at 19 life, I think that Matthew is in a reasonable position to be able to present Juha with lethal on some of these larger turns. Like, Juha is not going to have too much room to try to create a board state, I think, in the rest of this game.
Yeah, and again, just 1 damage from this Ether Ashwing, assuming no play from Arsenal here, something like maybe a Sigil of Solace, but this is just very, very slow, meticulous offense on the part of Juha.
Yeah, I think that Jermai can often utilize their life total in the beginning of the game to try to create a board state that the opposing player needs to sort of commit cards to and try to maintain, like, it will give the Jermai player a lot of tempo, right? They can sort of snowball and build off of that. But getting this really clunky start, having no board, Matt taking you down all the way to 19, it's like, it's just, it's a totally different Jermai game, right?
Yeah, I think Foulkes is in a strong position right now. And, if you're Juha, you're looking to find some purchase in this game, some way to create multiple dragons. You're kind of begging for one of those infamous Ranger turns, right? Something where just not a lot happens on the other side of the arena. And if that's the case, windows are wide open, right? You make a couple dragons, you're right back in this thing as Juha. But thus far, things have played out very much to the blueprint that I think Matthew Foulkes would have presented should you have asked him, how do you actually beat this fearsome Dromai that has dominated you in your testing thus far?
Yep, we start off with a Searing Shot, so on hit, going to take another life away from Juha. With Go Again, almost surely.
Decent threat represented here. 4 damage plus that on hit. We talk about things like virtual 0 for 5s when it comes to something like Drill Shot. This is almost
looks to be a blue.
A real 0 for 5, if it's red. However, it is blue here. Foulkes continues to surprise me with the blue arrows.
Has played a lot of blue arrows this game.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's the only reason why Juha wasn't killed a few turns
I
ago,
think you're
to be honest.
100% right. When you think about the power cards that have been played, Foulkes has very much had access to those. It's just been kind of the arrows coming up a little bit short.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You want to talk 4 or 5 blue arrows being played over the course of this game. That represents 10 damage that you could have been facing instead.
Absolutely, but I think presented with the choice to either draw my three of a kinds and Codex of Frailties, or draw my red arrows, I think I would choose the 3 oaks there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%.
Looks like a red Searing Shot here to follow it up.
Yeah, let's see what the Voltaire is on this card. Cards in hand, I'm expecting we probably want to go again on this one, and it is going to be go again. Voltaire used up, but does have Bolton Shot ready in Arsenal.
Matt's still having big turns even here, even as we don't have some of those power cards. Matt leaning back, I think feeling a little bit comfortable in this
Yeah,
matchup.
those nerves starting to settle out a little bit for Foulkes. Very much in the driver's seat right now. And a confident Matt Foulkes is a scary thing to see across the table from you. When he gets in his groove, one of the most intimidating, fierce players out here on the Flesh and Blood Pro circuit.
Juha finding that 0 for 4, fade foreseen, going to dodge the on-hit trigger here. Very efficient block.
Yeah, good time for that. Nice cleanup block. Maybe has a chance of letting Juha have some cards on the next turn. The follow-up here is just bolt and shot. Maybe you can get away with one, let that through.
Fade foreseen opting to the top there. Matt with another bolt and shot ready to go. In Arsenal, 1 card in hand, 1 resource floating. Tunic on 2, so next turn potentially setting up for another power turn if we draw the right cards.
Yeah, and I think that's what Foulkes is debating right now. Can go ahead and maybe set up a 6-card hand on the next turn, but is just going to fire off that bolt and shot, look to present a little bit more damage. And like we said, you're at the point where every point of damage matters. If
Absolutely.
you're Juha, you do not want this life total to go any lower, and we see more and more blocks being committed. This is just going to be an Arsenal for Foulkes, cleans up the combat chain. 25-16 are the life totals on this turn. Couple cards in hand for Juha, and I think this is a huge
Critical turn, yeah.
You just need to do something here if you're Juha to start getting out there. And at the same time, you got to fade a popper if you are able to do something. So here's a nice start to that. It is Kyloria coming down, one of the most threatening dragons you could see. Does Foulkes have the timely popper to interact with this card?
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like Juha needs to try to deploy something as threatening as something like a Tomultai. Maybe the Kyloria draw effect will be enough. Doesn't look like Matt has potentially drawn the popper unless there might be a down and dirty in that arsenal.
Yep, always an option. And this represents on the field a significant chunk of damage with potentially more rolled up should there be a threat in Arsenal, should there be a threat drawn off of Kyloria. You're in a pretty good spot if you're Juha. I think this was about the play you needed to make on this turn. There's the question I have is, what's the pitch? What's the pitch here? Are there resources floating? Are there ways to maybe follow this up with an even more exciting turn should that Kyloria connect?
I think that if Matt had the popper here, it might just be game over. Like that, this is a absolute critical turn for Juha to try to get some board state.
Yep, but given the amount of time we've seen taken thus far, I think
Surely
Matt
not.
windmill slams that popper should he have it. But we are going to go ahead and follow up with the rest of the Ashwings now, and we're going to end with Kyloria on the chain. So coming in for 4, a very dangerous attack here for Foulkes, both in terms of starting to chip down that life total, but more importantly, representing an extension of this turn.
Yeah, Kyloria, pretty okay dragon against a lot of other classes, but particularly good against the Rangers because they just simply do not have any equipment to sort of deal with this 4 breakpoint. Obviously, don't have the 0 for 4 defense reactions that we see in a lot of the top performing decks here at the Pro Tour. So, yeah, a lot to deal with for Matt, but honestly, it could be worse when it comes to dragons being deployed. Could have been a Chromai, could have been a Tomultai.
Yeah, something like Tomultai cleaning up New Horizons can certainly be backbreaking. But it is just going to hit here for Juha, and this is a big moment. What is the draw here? It looks like it is going to be another pitch. Making a command and conquer. Perfect. Nice. A perfect turn. That was the card I was thinking of when I was concerned about the color of pitch. What was going to be the option for Juha on the back end? And having that command and conquer in Arsenal, really doing a great job of potentially slowing down Foulkes on a key turn on that potential Fandel Spring Tunic turn. And now you expect the next turn from Foulkes has to be dedicated to cleaning up that Kyloria. You cannot let it stand.
Yeah, only 1 card in Arsenal. I was going to ask, do we see Matt Foulkes actually take the CNC? And go down to 12 here. Is going to go to play the 4-card hand. I wonder if we might have 3 Oak in hand, 3 Oak off of Tunic.
I think I saw a Rain Razors. It does look like there's also going to be a Winter's Bite, so a bit of disruption on this turn for Foulkes.
Game looking a lot closer now to finally
absolutely
committed to the board.
That was the turn Juha needed, and I think a significant amount of headway was made there. I would still say things leaning slightly in Foulkes' favor, but it depends a lot on what this turn brings to the table, and it looks like sizable pitch here, 3 being pitched into Quiver. Quiver activation reveals Battering Bolt.
Ooh, you see it on Matt's face too.
Yeah, the problem with that is that goes directly to the Arsenal. It would have been an incredible card to draw, but loading that into the arsenal, not at all what Foulkes wanted here. And, that quiver, it can be a godsend in some scenarios, but it's rolling the dice, man, and you really are at fate's whims when you activate it, putting Battering Bolt into arsenal, and now you have to question, well, what's the rest of the hand for Foulkes? Is he able to even use that Battering Bolt proactively on this turn?
Look at the posture change from the lean back to the leaning forward.
A huge shift has occurred over these last 2 turns.
Wow.
And Foulkes is troubled by that Battering Bolt coming off the top of the deck. Certainly were way better options to be seen there. What is the rest of the hand here? It looks like the next play is going to be
Arctic Incarceration.
Yeah, so this is a nice way to kind of save a scuffed turn. It's hard for these Draw My decks to play through Arctic Incarceration unless they draw a blue. It's always possible.
Also a 4-card hand as well.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm assuming Battering Bolt has to have been one of the worst draws possible off of that quiver for Matt.
Yeah, just has to set up here. I suspect that other card in Arsenal might have been a red, so had the option of maybe pitching the 2 reds to deploy that Battering Bolt, but that really was only going to clean up that Kyloria. And now Juha's in a very good spot if there's a blue, he's in an incredible spot. If not, I still think you can pitch 3 cards into this Frostbite and do something as long as you have a 0-cost play.
Important to note, Codex of Frailty and Endless Arrow drawn for Matthew Foulkes. So if we do find our way back over to Matt's turn, I do think that Matt is in a good position with that draw. That being said, Juha having a blue here is going to create quite the board state for Matt to deal with.
What a back and forth game thus far, and let's see what the play is into this Frostbite. That does look like a blue, I believe, and it is going to be an invoked Asvali, and this is a huge
Matt, no
turn.
Arcane Barrier too.
Yeah, this is a huge turn for Juha. If there is not some way to pop on this turn, Foulkes might be forced into blocking and losing cards from hand. And if you're in Matthew's seat, you do not want to do that because now you have a compounding problem. You have these dragons out there in the arena. You have Asvali, you have Kyloria, which are absolutely demanding answers. And it's very hard for Foulkes to shift to a defensive posture now.
Yeah, absolutely. Committing those bracers earlier to the large turn, which I do think is correct. I don't know if you commit an entire card to the arcane damage of Asvalite, but if you're going to die, you definitely do, and I think we're going to find Matt in that state pretty soon.
Yeah, what a dramatic turn of events over these last few turns. As
That's all
I said,
it takes.
Things were leaning heavily in Fox's favor, and maybe for the second game in a row for you and I, Brendan, we've seen sort of that Ranger luck rear its head. It was the quiver activation, maybe revealing the worst possible card, maybe a hand that was already not all that functional. And this is the punish when you play Lexi. Look, those ceilings, indisputable high. Some of the highest we've ever seen in Flesh and Blood, 100%. But there's some lows baked in as well. And I think Foulkes is trying to ride through a particularly strong low right now.
Yep, there is a balance to being able to have access to cards like Codex of Frailty and 6-card hands consistently.
And really debating on this first Ether Ashwing. Again, you think if there was a popper, you just windmill slam here. You try and end the turn. But the rest of those Ashwings are coming through now. And I think you saw a little bit of a sigh of relief from Juha. Just thank God I can come through with these dragons.
I think Juha knows that a popper here is the only way to make this game somewhat close. And with this, it does look very grim for Matt.
Yeah, looking like Asvali going to be the follow-up to that first dragon attack.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a couple more coming behind it. The rest of those Ashwings coming through.
Juha, 2 cards in hand still. Kyloria potentially threatening a draw.
So many good potential plays here from Juha with that hand rolled up. Extend the combat chain a little bit, demand cards from hand. Also, potentially looking at another card from this Kyloria, unless Foulkes wants to do something like commit a card and equipment, but man, that's
you
a
have
huge,
to, right?
huge risk.
Maybe not a card and equipment, but I feel like this Kyloria is almost a must block. You put him on a 3-card hand, surely he's presenting lethal off of that.
You assume so. And you wonder what Foulkes wants to do in this position.
I wonder if Foulkes gives a 3-block plus a Tunic. Maybe he can give a 2-card block, but it feels like Kyloria just can't connect if the game is over. There goes the Tunic. Even on 3, we see a
I agree. I think this is just a must-make play for Foulkes. Too likely to just be dead in a lot of scenarios, to have no hand going into the next turn if this block is not made. And looks like we're going to go ahead, filter through that Flamescale Furnace and just Arsenal here. So a little bit of a decrease in pressure on the side of Juha. If that was some kind of attack, some kind of threat, I might be willing to call this game over. But now, as it stands, things are going to go back to Foulkes with a 3-card hand, 2 cards in Arsenal, facing down 5 dragons. across the arena. Can he find a way out of this scenario? And Foulkes is saying, let me think about this a little bit. I want some time to respond to that activation.
Yeah, so we know one battering bolt in Arsenal, one down and dirty on the bottom of the deck, so 2 outs to draw that popper potentially. But, Juha draws into a Chromai or something. I think there's no way Matt comes out of this game. At the same time, I don't think that Matt is going to be presenting 16 points of lethal damage on this turn.
It would be tough.
Juha is set up for a very nice turn cycle as he passes it back over to Matt.
Yeah.
Matt in a very tough spot.
Foulkes is content to go ahead and close the combat chain there. And that means we're headed back to his turn. This is a big one.
Number 1 draw for Juha here, I think, is probably the Chromai.
I agree. Some certainty, some safety would be very, very nice on Juha's side.
Chromai much better than Maragai in this kind of scenario.
Yep, the game has reached a certain point where things have shifted. Your priorities are just let me have my turn and I can do my thing. And I think I see the arsenal there for Foulkes. Yeah, it does look like Rainrazors, and it's going to be played face up because it has to reclaim that arsenal slot. So that's going to make things a little bit more predictable for Juha. And now that Codex of Frailty has to be committed to the pitch, it's going to be an endless arrow loaded up. Now this will do some work clearing those dragons.
Absolutely. I mean, Endless Arrow, we talked about a fantastic draw to sort of maintain board state for the Lexi player here. That being said, despite clearing 2 dragons, Juha likely to have a 5-card hand going into the next turn. I think that it is almost imperative that potentially Matt Foulkes will need to draw a popper to find his way out of this, sitting at 6 life compared to Juha's 16.
Yeah.
And there we go, firing off the battering bolt, getting that out of Arsenal.
Yeah, it has to pitch that endless arrow to go ahead and clear that, and I think it is the right play here. You need to reclaim some real estate, if you will, and just try and keep pressure up. So 6 headed the way of Juha. Taking a look at that battering bolt effect, that's one that always baffles people a little bit. As we said, this battering bolt is not here to be played. It's mostly to go ahead and offer a popper, but in this case, losing all non-action cards in hand and maybe an additional life. So there is some potential to go ahead and restrict Juha's hand a little bit, if you're caught with something like a defense reaction, although often you just kind of commit those cards elsewhere.
Absolutely. I mean, you see how much of a brick battering bolt was into the arsenal. We pitched those power cards to be able to play it. Just absolutely brutal from Matt. Juha rechecking this. Probably never had this card actually played against him as a Dramai. Always been used as a popper.
Absolutely. It's very rare this will end up in the arsenal for Alexi in this matchup. Sizable arrow, of course, buffed by that Rainrazors.
Sizable, but I think that you really need to be presenting lethal as Matt Foulkes here, if possible. I mean,
we're in the late stages here.
Juha 5-card hand with 3 Aether Ashwings on board is very scary. 3 Ash to facilitate dragons to come down. We do see a Fate Foreseen. Like you said, you just commit the defense reaction to stop that trigger from taking a life.
Yep, completely fine use there. Gets to do a little filtering here. Going to go ahead, opt a card to the bottom. Juha takes 4, is going to reveal the hand. So face up. I mean, that does matter. Important information here for Foulkes, but not going to like what he sees. It is a burn them all.
With a Maragai, too. So even protecting one of those Ashwings, most likely, or Maragai protecting whatever dragon may come. Not sure what's in Arsenal, but the burn them all is a very rough card to have with Matt here at 6.
Yeah, that
no
is not the reveal that Matt was hoping for there. And now Juha gets to try and craft lethal on Foulkes' side again. It feels like popper or bust for another turn, and there's just not that many. We know that down and dirty probably not ready to come up yet. It's kind of...
It's the second down and dirty we're looking for
here.
Yeah,
I think so. And
one more card, and
no,
it is
that's
an endless arrow.
No, we did not find a popper. I'm fairly confident. It looks like...
Pitch them, burn them all, play them Raga. I'm wondering what's in Arsenal now.
Yeah, that is a good question. This Maragai going to go ahead, solidify plans on this
There we
turn.
go, Vincerikai.
Yeah, just a huge dragon, and what a threat.
No Phantasm here for Vincerikai. Surely as it swings in off the Maragai trigger. Really tough for Matt to deal with. Must block, cannot let Vincerikai hit.
An absolute nightmare dragon in this scenario for Matthew Foulkes. Protected from any poppers, which Foulkes doesn't have, by the way, by that Maragai's effect.
I mean, this is looking to put Matt into a range where even if he does draw the popper on the next turn, he might survive, but likely getting pretty close to locked in this game right now. Actually looking to maybe block with the New Horizons. I mean, that is the dire straits that we are in.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot let this card hit. It is just an absolute disaster. The problem is there's a very good chance that Juha is able to claim the vast majority of Foulkes' hand here, and you have to be able to kill that Vincerikai on the next turn.
Juha trying to figure out how to sequence around a potential popper because Phantasm is now active.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter. Foulkes does not have it, and things have now firmly shifted in favor of Juha Saarnilampi trying to go ahead and punch that ticket.
Looks like they shortcut the Aether Ashwing's attacks a little bit. That is why Matt is down at 3.
Yeah, and look, best possible play here. Endless Arrow cleans up both those big threatening dragons. That's exactly what you're hoping for. But you have left Juha with a 4-card hand, 3 Aether Ashwings at the ready, your life total at 3. And again, it's like, please, for the love of God, can I find a popper?
It's top deck popper here, no doubt. Matt wheeling off the top of the deck. We see Codex of Frailty, Winter's Bite.
I don't see it.
I don't see it either.
I don't see it. I don't think we found it. And you see now, if you're on the Lexi seat and you're trying to build for a tournament after Dromai has almost certainly silenced the doubters, proven itself to be a top-tier deck, how important those poppers are. I think we're going to see a lot more poppers in coming weeks in all of these deck lists, quite frankly.
Triple pitch for Vincerikai, definitely open to a popper blood if it did exist.
Yeah, it's extremely, extremely vulnerable. It does seem to be the best play in this scenario, given that hand.
Yeah, it looks like Drill Shot being the third card.
Yeah,
there
and
extends the
that's
hand,
just going to get the handshake. And Juha Saarnilampi battled through a back-and-forth game to go ahead and find the W against Matthew Foulkes. And I'll tell you, across those first 2 to 3 turns of the game,